what is 2026 looking like for Pakistan when you look at it from a security lens?
From a security lens, I see a lot of challenges emerging. A lot of grievances, I would say, or challenges that have not been resolved in the last few years. And as you also mentioned, when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to Pakistan's emerging role in the international community as also a net security provider and as an enabler of peace. In that area, Pakistan has done very well. When it comes to the internal challenges being security, especially if you look at the western border of Pakistan. When you look at the economic challenges that Pakistan is facing, we're like almost done with our IMF program. A lot of like structural changes have been made in Pakistan's economy. Again, it will probably need a lot more time to basically come out of this whole economic cycle that we are going through right now. So especially when it comes to security, I see that Pakistan will have to basically adopt new policies, new approaches, a new way of looking at the region.
Right.
And that brings its own challenges, but it also brings a lot of opportunity as well.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Pakistan Observer podcast. मेरा नाम अब्दुल्ला मलिक है और मेरे साथ आज मौजूद हैं Sheharyar. Sheharyar, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Pakistan Observer.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
Sheharyar, 2026 has been, it started off in a chaotic manner in Pakistan, around the world. I want to start off by understanding how Sheharyar is feeling about 2026 as a person.
Wow, that's a very a strong start, I would say. As a person, 2026 will be coming with a lot of challenges, I see, because the area in which we basically work and the environment in which we operate, I see it becoming a bit more contested, a bit more, I would say, difficult. In terms of economy, security, political economy, I think we'll be facing a lot of challenges. So navigating the changes that the world is going through in such a rapid pace, I think it will be a challenge to basically operate under the certain conditions in which, the geopolitics and the local politics, the economy will present to us in Pakistan.
Sheharyar, all these challenges also bring a lot of uncertainty. On a personal level, how are you dealing with, the day-to-day uncertainty? Because you deal with security, analyzing all of that. That also calls for a lot of anxiety just as a human being. What are some of the mechanisms that you've developed over the years to just be a sane person?
That is a good question because operating in Pakistan, working in areas that focus on security, we also focus on political economy. We try to understand the drivers of conflict and we try to work in this space that is between government, law enforcement, policymakers, but at the same time we also operate on the grassroots level to understand what the people are feeling, what anxieties they have. So operating in between these two, I would say, contested areas, it's always a challenge. And yes, I do understand that it comes with a lot of challenges, but it also brings a lot of opportunities for meaningful change.
Right.
So what we try to do is get the perceptions and feelings and the anxieties that people face and feel daily at the grassroots level and how they basically are operating the challenges that we're also feeling and bring those into meaningful policy change by bringing those challenges into the whole political debate, policy debate as well, and bring that to the stakeholders.
So Sheharyar, we've been talking a little bit about, having personal feelings, personal anxieties in a world that is uncertain, unsafe, and just not a very stable place to be in right now. On a national level, feelings बहुत मुख्तलिफ नहीं हैं. I mean, I know that 2025 has been a sense of optimism around the country for a few reasons, but I want to take you to the national Pakistan level. What is 2026 looking like for Pakistan when you look at it from a security lens?
From a security lens, I see a lot of challenges emerging. A lot of grievances, I would say, or challenges that have not been resolved in the last few years. And as you also mentioned, when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to Pakistan's emerging role in the international community as also a net security provider and as an enabler of peace. In that area, Pakistan has done very well. When it comes to the internal challenges being security, especially if you look at the western border of Pakistan. When you look at the economic challenges that Pakistan is facing, we're like almost done with our IMF program. A lot of like structural changes have been made in Pakistan's economy. Again, it will probably need a lot more time to basically come out of this whole economic cycle that we are going through right now. So especially when it comes to security, I see that Pakistan will have to basically adopt new policies, new approaches, new way of looking at the region.
Right.
And that brings its own challenges, but it also brings a lot of opportunity as well. Yeah.
And you mentioned the IMF right now. I want to ask you, is it true that selling off F-16s and other fighter jets will help us pay off IMF debts that we've accumulated over the last couple of years? Or was that just chatter amongst the media?
It's an opportunity for sure. Defense production internationally brings in a lot of revenue. It is a space which has a lot of producers, but it also has a lot of buyers. Because if you look at the security environment globally, I think a lot of investments or a lot of defense purchasing throughout the globe is increasing. Not a lot of countries can afford the technology that is offered by the US or European countries. A lot of countries basically need cheaper options. So that segment, Pakistan is trying to make an entry. Now, your question whether this can offset the challenges imposed on our economy through the IMF, it is a matter of time on how Pakistan approaches it. One, do we have the capacity to basically produce the number of jets that are in demand? So if we look at the news cycle, we see that we have a lot of interest coming in from Nigeria, we have interest coming from Bangladesh, we have interest coming from some Central Asian countries, some African countries. So for example, for the sake of argument, let's say tomorrow you get like an order of 50 GF-17s. So we'll have to see what the production cycle is all about.
Right.
What arrangements we have with China. What is produced in Pakistan, because we have to like keep in mind that it's a joint project of Pakistan and China. So what kind of arrangement will we have with China? And I know since China is like one of our strategic and economic partners, China would be very happy to like see that jet that has been produced jointly in collaboration with the Chinese defense and Pakistan's defense industry is gaining a lot of positive reputation, I would say, because of Pakistan at the end of the day. So China would also be supporting Pakistan in productions. So we'll have to see that whether in the right amount of time, in an efficient way, Pakistan can actually produce that plane in the time required. And looking at international supply chains, how we can basically do that.
Right. But it is a possibility.
It's definitely a possibility.
It's a possibility. Yeah. It's a good thing to hear as a Pakistani. Sheharyar, I'm going to bring you back to Pakistan, but you've mentioned a few regional forces. So we spoke about Afghanistan, we spoke about China, we spoke about Bangladesh, and then of course there are other regional members as well. Let's go to Afghanistan first. Firstly, tell me, how are we feeling about Afghanistan as a country, as Pakistan, as the Islamic Republic? Kya feelings hain when it comes to Afghanistan?
Well, when it comes to Afghanistan, the first word that comes to my mind when I hear your question is, I would say, disappointment. So this disappointment stems from the relationship that Pakistan thought that they had developed with Afghanistan, and the expectations that Pakistan had with Afghanistan when the Taliban took over in 2021, when the US forces withdrew. Pakistan was already facing a major terrorism issue with TTP. Pakistan is currently facing that issue, and obviously a lot of issues coming from Balochistan as well, with like various different terrorist organizations. We can discuss that later. So there was this thought in Pakistan, there was this expectation in Pakistan that when the Afghan Taliban basically come to power, they would rein in these terrorist organizations, and they would make sure, and also if I put into context the Doha Peace Agreement, which clearly states that Afghan soil will not be used to conduct, or by any terrorist organizations to conduct activities in the region or globally.
Right.
So the Afghan Taliban gave this assurity to the US, the Western stakeholders, and Pakistan as well. So that promise was not fulfilled. If we look at terrorist incidents and attacks coming from TTP, since August 2021, when the Taliban took over, they have exponentially grown since 2021 up till today. And when Pakistan approaches Afghanistan, they haven't received any support from the Afghan Taliban in reining in these organizations. So that has created this friction between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which is not letting out. And that is now crossing over into our relationship with Afghanistan when it comes to social relationships, economic relationships, trade relationships. All of those are getting affected. And you see the whole, it started off with, repatriation of Afghan refugees. And then in the next step, Pakistan basically stopped trade, closed their borders, enforcement of borders. So it's escalating. And then it also escalated to cross-border strikes by Pakistan at TTP hideouts, which, by the way, the Afghan Taliban don't even admit that TTP is operating from their soil. Other than the Afghan Taliban, the whole of the region, various UN organizations, various security reports that come out from the UN missions in Afghanistan, they continue on telling the world that Afghanistan has now become a hub of regional terrorist organizations, and of all hues, sizes and colors. ISK, TTP, Al-Qaeda, IMU, ETIM, TIP, every organization, terrorist organizations focused towards China, Central Asia, Pakistan, and obviously the West as well. Let's not forget where the ISK operatives were coming from, that also conducted a terrorist attack in Moscow, killed over 150 people. So they also traveled through Afghanistan. So it's become a regional problem. Pakistan is feeling the brunt right now. But if the region doesn't come together to basically treat this as a regional issue rather than a Pakistan issue, then this whole terrorist problem will spill over. It's already spilling over. Yesterday there was a attack, or I would say a suicide attack, in a cafe in Kabul, which has been accepted by ISK. And this was targeted towards the Chinese workers. So what the sad thing that I basically see is that the West, then the regional stakeholders, they are basically talking to the Afghan Taliban bilaterally. So they're discussing their own problems. So Russia is talking to the Afghan Taliban when it comes to ISK. Even the West is concerned about Daesh, ISK. When it comes to China, China talks about ETIM, IMU. Uzbekistan talks about the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, or TIP. But when it comes to TTP, which amongst all of these terrorist organizations is the most lethal, the region or even the West, they basically see it as a Pakistan problem. They don't see it as a regional problem. Right. They don't see it as a global problem. Right. And they basically say Pakistan needs to handle it.
Right.
When it comes to its relations with Afghanistan, and just like, and there are a lot of like countries that have supported Pakistan. For example, Qatar, they tried to mediate. Then there was Turkey. China has tried. Russia has also tried. There are like a lot of like bilateral, multilateral, a lot of like forums that have brought Pakistan, Afghanistan on the table to discuss, but like this has not borne any fruit whatsoever.
So I want you to hold on to the thought of the West, because we will come to that. But, and forgive me if this is going to sound like a bit of a not the smartest question. I get it. With Afghanistan, our basic problem is terrorism and the export of terrorism that is coming out of the of that country. For the Afghans, what is the problem with Pakistanis?
That is a very good question, because if we want to resolve any conflict, we have to see what the drivers of those conflict are. What are the historical drivers? What are the social drivers? What are the cultural or economic drivers? So I have basically worked in this field as well. We've like done a lot of like back channel track twos. We've also implemented a lot of donor funded programming when it comes to refugee support, when it comes to relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So the discussions that I've had with my Afghan friends, it basically boils down to 2 or 3 main points. One, which is a non-starter for Pakistan, is the contestation over the border on their side. They basically believe that this border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, the Durand line, they basically see it as a colonial construct and an unsettled agenda from the times of the British. Other than that, they basically see Pakistan as meddling into their internal politics, and they also basically see that when it comes to the whole invasion of USSR, which culminated into the Taliban coming to power for the first time in the 90s. And then subsequently, the 9/11, and when the US and NATO forces came into Afghanistan, they basically see Pakistan as an enabler. And now this is a very important distinction. How? If you look at the Central Asian republics surrounding the north of Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. Then if you look at Iran, if you look at the western border of Afghanistan, all of these countries did not really support the US or NATO forces.
Right.
After 9/11, Pakistan was the frontline non-NATO ally of the US. So they basically haven't forgotten that. And this is also the narrative that basically is cultivated by TTA, which is the Afghan Taliban. The TTP also uses this to launch attacks into Pakistan. That yes, in August 2021, we defeated a superpower. The superpower being the US and their Western allies being the NATO countries that were in Afghanistan for over 20 years. And after the struggle that we had against these Western occupiers, we defeated them and they left. But their key enabler is still there, and that is Pakistan. So this is how they justify it under religious ideology, under cultural grievances, historical, social grievances. But the truth is not that simple at the end of the day. When it comes to Pakistan's relationship with Afghanistan, from our side, we basically see that this started when it's actually like started from the independence of Pakistan. But again, if we move forward to the USSR invasion, Pakistan was the only country in the region that basically took the Afghan refugees.
Right.
and we hosted over like 4 to 5 million of them.
So I want to follow up on the refugees, but to sort of put it in maybe like a statement, what you've said is, what I at least understood was that, there's a lot of like past that the Afghans are holding on to, and they're not willing to let that go, and thereby we're having all these challenges that we're facing right now. Having said all of that, Sheharyar, do you think that the treatment that we are meeting out to the Afghans and the refugees here, and sort of overnight kicking them out of the country, do you think that's a fair treatment? And if it is, just like to build upon that.
So the whole idea or the whole contestation around the ideas of refugees and migrants, that's now a global issue. And you remember we discussed this earlier as well. So in the context of Pakistan and the Afghan refugees that we're talking about, when Pakistan initially started talking about this repatriation of Afghan refugees, it was mainly focused on the illegal migrants, not the refugees.
Right.
So we have to keep this distinction in check. So the differentiation between migrants and refugees is important, because the refugees, they basically come with certain rights under the I would say refugee charter. Refugees are generally escaping or trying to escape a country or a region or their area where they're coming from, because they fear for their life. And if they go back, their lives would be in danger. When it comes to migrants, they are basically moving from one area to another because of economic incentives,
right,
or to start a new life or a better life. So these distinctions need to be kept in check. Secondly, documentation and paperwork when it comes to the migrants or refugees is important. And a lot of like illegal migrants that Pakistan basically talked about, these were people who did not have any documentation whatsoever to stay in Pakistan. They did not have any passports, they did not have any paperwork. And this was basically seen from the Pakistan side as a security problem rather than a human rights problem.
Right.
So that framing can be challenged. You can criticize it. But the idea behind it was rational from Pakistan's point of view. Then the sheer size of the refugee population, and this I'm talking from the 70s, and now we're in 2025. And let's not forget that in 2021 as well, there was also a huge influx of migrants that came from the Afghanistan side into Pakistan. Now, that was also a bit challenged in the sense that when the Taliban took over, they did not really attack the local population. Their lives are not really in danger. So the amount of violence before 2021 and after 2021 went down drastically. So the whole idea that their lives are in danger in Afghanistan was not really holding up.
Right.
A lot of people that cross the border after 21, so these distinctions I'm just like making. One is a refugee argument, that these are the people that came in the 70s and till 9/11, I would say. And mind you, after 9/11, when later on when the Taliban government was toppled, there was a massive repatriation. A lot of people went back.
Absolutely.
So after 2021, there were a lot of people who were actually working for Afghanistan National Defense Forces. They were working for US missions. They were working for international INGOs. They were working for various different organizations, Western organizations. They basically thought that the Afghan Taliban would target them or punish them in one way or the other. And a lot of Western missions basically requested the Pakistan government that please allow these 25, 30, 40, 50,000 people to cross over, and we'll make sure that they are repatriated to various Western countries.
Right.
So that was one of the reasons. And obviously, because our border is quite porous, we have entry points. But this 2,500 kilometer border. A lot of people basically just like cross over daily. They have businesses, they do trade, they have tribal linkages, they have like ethnic linkages, connections. So what Pakistan wanted to do, because the whole cycle of violence in Pakistan was increasing every day, they wanted to make sure that this border becomes a hard border. So this also created a lot of contestation. Why? Because as I told you earlier, the Afghanistan side does not really recognize this as a border. And Pakistan basically wants to make this border hard so terrorists cannot like come from both sides. So this was the whole framework under which the whole refugee situation was looked at. Now, in the hindsight, whether that was a good idea or not a good idea, whether it was a human rights issue, whether this treatment was good or bad, obviously there are both sides of the story. A lot of refugees, for example, 80-90% of them are not terrorists. A lot of them were fleeing for their lives. But this debate is also now, when we look at Pakistan, the whole criticism becomes a bit more nuanced. But this whole situation is also happening in Europe right now. It is the same debate that is happening. In Europe, I was just like reading the other day, in Sweden, there was this discussion happening that if we are giving asylum to someone to stay in Sweden, and I know you have a background of staying in Sweden, and working in Sweden as well. They basically say if these guys are going back for their vacations, so their lives are not really in danger, are they? So even in Europe, a lot of countries are making a distinction whether these people are refugees and they're seeking asylum, or whether if they are economic migrants and they are coming into Europe to seek a better life or better economic opportunities. So this is a nuance and a debate that happened in Pakistan in 2021, and it came into the limelight under this whole framework. But this debate, I'm trying to say, is not just Pakistan centric, this is global now. Yeah. So this whole nuance between refugee and a migrant is the reason why right-wing political parties are winning elections in Europe, in the European Union. Why right-wing parties like the AfD in Germany, they are winning votes. Traditional parties are losing. Because of this whole policy of migration
going on. Sheharyar, I want to expand on the region a little bit. I do want to talk about a bunch of regional, some are partners and some are not. But a quick discussion on Bangladesh. So we've had this newfound love for Bangladesh that we haven't had in the last many years. At least I don't remember the last time we were so cozy with Bangladesh. What's happening over there? Is it sustainable? Is it going to be long term? What is the security analysis saying?
Well, when we look at Bangladesh, this is not really a newfound love. Growing up in Pakistan, I wasn't like really alive when the whole partition took place and the creation of Bangladesh happened. There are a lot of people who are alive in Pakistan who basically saw it.
Absolutely.
This whole political upheaval, which basically is attributed to the whole idea of Gen Z, young people who basically believe that they are politically marginalized, and they basically come out on the streets and they want a change, a drastic change. So this phenomena is not just Bangladesh centric, it has been observed in various different countries as well, especially in South Asia. We saw this happening in Sri Lanka, we also saw this happening in Nepal as well. The driving force behind it, a lot of these countries basically feel that India, for example, a much bigger country, a much bigger economy, has a lot of interests, and they are also meddling politically into their political systems. So this was being felt, and the reason why Pakistan and Bangladesh drifted apart was because of certain policies of Sheikh Hasina Wajid, who was obviously holding on to a lot of, I would say, resentments from the 1971 era. And to basically make her hold over politics, more, I would say, strong. She basically made Pakistan the enemy. And obviously getting a lot of support from India. So that whole connection with Pakistan was compromised for longest time. Now this Gen Z that basically was being brought up in Bangladesh, their problems were very different. That era was very different. They were not alive when 1971 happened.
Right.
They have their own problems, they have their own aspirations. They want a very different future for themselves. They don't want an external stakeholder interfering in their internal politics. And this is where the whole rebellion or revolution started. And the key point, or why Hasina Wajid was ousted, was one, nepotism, lack of economic opportunities. And we have to see the whole situation or the upheaval or the uprising from that lens. Pakistan was a beneficiary. Why? Because Sheikh Hasina Wajid and her, I would say, political partners supported by India were so anti-Pakistan that people or the youngsters started questioning that. Right. That why are we going with the foreign agendas? Why don't we chart our own future?
Right.
And like see what kind of relationship we want with Pakistan. So that is the only key difference. There was no love affair that developed with Pakistan overnight. No. It was just that the young people of Bangladesh want to take their own future into their own hands and they want to make their own decisions.
Right.
Not influenced by a regional player.
Third party. Yeah. Two follow-up questions on the same. One, I want to really understand and know from you what you feel, whether something similar is possible in Pakistan. So a Gen Z sort of revolution in the country. If that's possible, that's my first question, and maybe you can answer that first. I'll talk to you about the second one.
Well, a revolution is always possible. What we basically have to see whether the current situation or the resentment at the grassroots level, do the people have the voice to basically express their grievances? Is their political participation respected?
Right.
Or whether they have outlets to basically voice their concerns, or whether their concerns are taken up by the policymakers or people in power. It's as simple as that. Pakistan, obviously, we keep on hearing this statistic that 60-65% of Pakistan is under the age of 30. 35. I keep hearing this or reading this in every UN report, in every think tank's policy dialogue. But the question is, how are we engaging with that youth, this like bulge that we are feeling? Are these youngsters secure when it comes to their future? Do they have ample amount of political participation? Do they have areas in which they basically feel that they can express themselves? Do they have economic opportunities? Do they feel that they have opportunities in the future in which they can have like some sort of social mobility? Can they basically play a part in the direction that Pakistan takes? So unless or until we basically develop policies or take their considerations into account, there is always a chance of a revolution, or there's like always a spark that can lead to something. And if we look at what's happening in Balochistan and KP, we already see some sort of revolution brewing. I'm not saying that people are coming out on the streets, there's like problem, but the whole thought process behind there of resentment, of deprivation, the whole narrative, that is there, and that is like seeping into the local population, and that's where we talk about the prevention and countering of extremism.
Right.
That's where all of this becomes important.
Right. Sheharyar, the second question, we cannot not talk about India. We cannot have a security analyst come onto the podcast and not discuss India. So before I ask you a broader question about India, You had mentioned when we were talking about Bangladesh that there were many politically motivated factors that created that resentment between the two countries. Do you think that the resentment that we now have with India, yes, it is politically motivated, but if that factor was to go away, do you think that there's a chance for peace between the two countries?
I really hope that I had a good, optimistic answer for you. Something that sounds nice, something that sounds like an end of a fairy tale. But the situation in India has deteriorated to an extent that I don't see any good coming out of India. And I'll give you reasons. And I will also dare to be self-critical. The whole idea that India is playing with right now, ever since the BJP has come into power, is very ideologically militant in nature. So the whole idea of RSS, Hindutva, this whole ideology, this is very exclusionary. This basically stems from the idea of Hindu supremacy. That Hindus are better than all other religious denominations in India. And mind you, this is a huge country. There are over 1 billion people there with various different national ethnicities, languages, religions. It's a beast of a country. And in that country, when one particular group basically feels that they're superior over the others, their whole ideology revolves around the fact that Muslims were invaders, and they basically have an expansionist worldview. Expansionist in the sense that how Al-Qaeda basically views the whole Islamic world. Expansionist, they basically believe that they don't believe in borders. So this whole ideology that is emerging from India, they basically believe that Pakistan doesn't really have a right to exist. This was our land. They have a revisionist view of history. They have also started criticizing the founding fathers of modern India, like Nehru, Gandhi, and basically they say they were Western agents.
But are you talking about the military elite, or are you also referring to a normal Indian?
I'm talking about the voters or the believers in the ideology of BJP. BJP is a political arm of RSS, which has this ideology of Hindutva, the superiority of the Hindu as compared to the rest of the people in India. So RSS, again, a fascist organization, literally fascist from every definition that you can come up with. Their political arm is the BJP. And BJP, as you know, in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 terms has been in power, and they keep on gaining more ground. And this ideology, and Prime Minister Modi being the poster child of this ideology, don't you see the amounts of incidents in which Muslims are being targeted? The amount of legislative changes that they've done to their constitution, in which they basically make sure that the Hindus are superior, have a superior citizenry, and Muslims are not even allowed to slaughter cows or vigilantism that we basically see. People are lynched on the streets, Muslims, Christians. And then again, we have to make sure that we keep this into context, that it's also a society which is based on the caste system. So there's a certain element from the inferior castes that are also feeling the brunt. So when this idea seeps into the whole society of India, do you seriously think there's anyone in India who would be looking towards to have some sort of peace with Pakistan? Now when this whole May 9th issue happened this year, there were some progressive voices that basically said that if the Congress had been in power, maybe this would not have happened. They're more progressive. They were more pro-peace with Pakistan. And the commentary that was coming from Congress was not that Prime Minister Modi has basically created a blunder. They were basically saying, oh, if you're saying that you had won, why did you stop? Why didn't you finish the job? That was the debate that was, or the criticism that was coming from the Congress side. And I can name a lot of leaders from the Congress. If you look at them, they seem very progressive, they seem very educated, they seem very pro-peace, but the narrative even that's coming from them was very anti-Pakistan.
Right.
So we basically see that the rallying point of India has become Pakistan bashing. And whether it's the Congress or BJP, they have this bare minimum agenda in which Pakistan will always be the enemy.
Right.
Now, there can be many reasons for it. Pakistan is also to be blamed for a certain part of it. But the fact that the majority of India has made this decision that they will basically be moving forward in the global political arena or in the international geopolitical arena without Pakistan, or as Pakistan as an enemy state, I don't think that will change in the next 5 to 10 years at least.
Got it. You mentioned May 9th, 2026, again, chaotic year. And we have heard time and again voices from India saying that there will be a rebuttal, there will be a bigger rebuttal. What are we expecting on the security angle? Are we thinking that there will be something happening? And if yes, what's the pulse in Pakistan?
So not in the near future, because there are a few realizations that India had after 9th May. One, that Pakistan has ultimate air superiority vis-a-vis support from China, and the innovations that Pakistan has done internally via their air force and a lot of other technologies that they basically never thought Pakistan could attain. So to counter that, I think India will have to basically innovate the way they basically operate, and integration that is required between the three forces. Right now India doesn't really have that, and this also has fits into the larger question on who basically gave this delusion or this delusionary idea that India has become so strong that it will counter China. So that question also needs to be asked, that where was this narrative coming from? This was generally coming from the West. Biden era and the era before him, India was being seen as a country, as a pivot against China. That policy is now in the dustbins when it comes to the Trump administration. So this gave India this delusion that it has the right to be a regional hegemon. It has the right to assert itself. And now look at where India is after 9th May. None of their neighbors are really on talking terms or on good terms with India. Look at how their relationship is with Bangladesh now. Look at how their relationship is with Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan historically, China. So this rude awakening that India has gone through, I don't think they would want to make that mistake again. The kind of support that Pakistan got from our strategic partners, and the kind of cold silence that India received from its stakeholders, that was very embarrassing for the Modi administration.
Right.
And look at how much censorship went into their media. They blocked at least 60 to 70,000 accounts. My Twitter account is still banned in India. My organizational Twitter account, even though we don't have a huge following, I'm not really an influencer by any standard.
It's a positive sign. It's a sign of making an impact.
Exactly.
Sheharyar, I have so many questions to ask, and I know we have limited time. So I wanna touch very briefly upon Kashmir, and understand what's that looking like. I mean, will there ever be a solution? Will the Kashmiris have a right to live a dignified life ever?
That is a very good question. And if you look at the way the world is moving, or the way international human rights conventions, UN charters, rule of law, international institutions that were tasked with upholding all of these ideals, they're already controversial and they are being questioned. So in this whole international architecture, it looks very difficult that general convention will hold. When it comes to the whole architecture of international rules-based order, as we call it, the US, that was an architect of this rules-based order. The US in itself is challenging how these organizations operate. When we basically see President Donald Trump questioning the viability of the UN and basically saying that what has the UN achieved at the end of the day, we also look at it from that point of view, because there are UN resolutions which basically talk about Kashmir. Those resolutions were rubbished by India, and up till today they haven't really fulfilled any of those obligations that they basically have signed on to themselves. And if we take this and look at what's happening in Ukraine, if you look at what's happening in Palestine, Gaza, if you look at now a lot of other areas where there is a lot of conflict, you basically see that the whole idea of might is right, and the countries that have hard power will be asserting themselves a lot more and will try to bend international norms and rules into their favor. So this is not a good precedent that is being set. So this also comes with challenges, this comes with opportunities. And the whole international framework and architecture, the way it is evolving, countries that have some sort of hard power will become more relevant. And that is what you basically see in Pakistan getting this newfound limelight and being seen as a net security provider. This was not the case, for example, 2 years ago. So this is a new direction in which the world is moving into. So these long pending issues, and a lot of scholars have basically called them forever wars. And Kashmir is one of them.
One of those.
When you look at Palestine, when you look at Gaza, when you look at a lot of conflicts in Africa, for example, South America, a lot of people believe that these will be forever wars that will continue on defining how geopolitics will be shaped and how future wars or conflicts will be going on.
Right. Very quickly, Sheharyar, how is China feeling towards Pakistan?
So I think China has...
and maybe I want you to focus on it in the backdrop of our close friendship with President Trump now. Maybe that angle, is that rubbing China the wrong way, or it doesn't really matter to them?
So China for the longest time has also been advocating to Pakistan that Pakistan should diversify its economic partners and not to entirely depend on China to support Pakistan economically.
Right.
And for that, obviously China has made a lot of investments through CPEC, and China has been a strategic and economic partner for Pakistan when Pakistan was not getting support from anyone or their our traditional partners. And China basically see Pakistan's diversification as a positive thing, not necessarily as a negative thing. Because when it comes to economic security of Pakistan, a secure, economically viable and economically prosperous Pakistan goes in the favor of Chinese foreign policy. So the frictions that you basically alluded to would be on the minerals and rare earth debate that is happening. and how Pakistan has basically provided an opportunity to the US and the Trump administration to come and explore and like see what potentials are there. China necessarily would not have any issues with that. We also have to like see how China operates. China basically makes a very long-term policy and a very long-term view on how they basically operate. When you look at Western model, economic model, it works on growth and it works on return on investment.
Right.
Because it's led by a private sector led economic model. So when they basically see Gwadar airport, Gwadar port, my Western friends keep on asking me that there's no traffic there. It's not being used. Or that airport is there. That airport is much bigger than Islamabad airport. We don't see any planes landing.
No.
Well, you don't see any planes landing right now. But after 25 years, the way China is looking at it, China is not looking at it as like an investment that they made right now and they want to return in the next 5 years. You know? So what about the next 25 years?
Right.
In your introduction, you yourself said that 2026 has come up with like so many changes. And January is not even over. How can we basically predict what will happen in 2026, 27, 28, and the way the whole geopolitical chessboard will be playing out?
Right.
So Pakistan will always be important because of proximity, because of China's economic interests, because of China's geopolitical interests. And Pakistan and China's interests are aligned. When it comes to other superpowers and their interests in the region, they can be temporary. They can be related to certain events. They can be economic. But Pakistan and China's relations, and this is also something I tell to my Indian friends as well, that we will always be neighbors. You know, the US administration will change. We don't know how the European Union will pan out. We don't know how the UN architecture will evolve, for example. But our geographies will not change. And that is why the relationship between countries will become more important. And if there's a spoiler in the region, for example, India, the whole idea behind economic integration, borderless economies, how we basically make our region secure, because now the politics is international politics is moving towards geoeconomics, regional blocks, how countries basically develop their economic systems which are independent or interdependent, I would say, and how regions will become stronger as compared to we even like keep on talking about the Monroe Doctrine, or now as President Donald Trump calls it, a Monroe Doctrine. It's all about influences in their respective hemispheres. So the US basically says that the Western Hemisphere is their area of influence.
Right.
Other superpowers basically will have their areas of influence. And in this area in which we are operating, there are already two superpowers. There's China, there's Russia, and there are emerging powers as well.
Right.
And there are also middle powers.
Right.
So how will basically Pakistan knows how to navigate. We have good relationships with all of them. But when it comes to India, it will always be contested.
Right.
Now, will India be the only spoiler in the region? Or for that matter, if I'm being very neutral, will Afghanistan always be a spoiler? Will Afghanistan always be looked at from a security point of view, from a security angle, from a geographical area which is home to a lot of terrorist organizations? So how will we be able to integrate this region and develop an economic model in which there will be spoilers?
Right.
So these are questions that are being asked.
Right. Sheharyar, let's discuss Iran a little bit. It seems like the bilateral relation is now stable. We've had ups and downs with Iran as well, but things are not looking too good within Iran. Tell me what an attack on Iran or chaos in Iran would mean for Pakistan.
It will definitely not be in favor of Pakistan. So Pakistan doesn't view any regime change operation as they are popularly called. First of all, any attack, external attack on Iran, I don't see the regime being changed, or the regime will be challenged, that's for sure. But changing the regime, I don't think it's possible without having boots on ground. So that is the main debate that is happening within the US circles as well, as the main mandate of President Donald Trump is that he will not start new wars, or he will not send American soldiers into harm's way. So short of that, I personally don't think that the Iranian regime can be changed by some airstrikes or some external attacks. So that's number one. The second question that emerges is that after a miracle, the regime kind of like retracts. Who will replace the regime? Will it be Raza Pahlavi, that's like sitting in the US, has never been to Iran? Will the Iranian people accept him? So these are very important questions, that who will be replacing the regime. So that uncertainty again. And the third thing, the agency of the Iranian people. What the Iranian people really want. How Iran would react to any aggression. We have to keep this in mind, that Iran, one, is not Venezuela. Secondly, the whole region is very, I would say, crucial when it comes to global oil supplies. Iran has the capability, Iran has technical capability to disrupt all of that. There are like a lot of US bases around the whole region. Iran would obviously retaliate. A lot of those bases are in GCC countries. They're in countries that cannot afford, some sort of like friction with Iran. So this time around as well, from my understanding, a lot of GCC countries basically went to the US and they basically said, we cannot like afford this right now.
Right.
This is not like something that goes into the favor of anyone.
Right.
International oil supplies, global value chains, the reaction that would come from Iran. And at the end of the day, if the mission is to change the regime, and it doesn't happen at the end of the day, so what was all of this worth? So these are the questions that were asked. I don't think the US had answers, and this is why it seems that the regime has survived for now. Now, what does the regime need to do to cater to the grievances of the Iranian people? How the Iranian people have basically felt that the environment in Iran is very claustrophobic. Economic opportunities. And again, economic opportunities are also very tied and linked to the international sanctions that Iran is under. So that has also created this like whole economic dilemma for the regime in Iran. So how they will basically take this forward, and how they will basically integrate the people into the whole economic. So this is something that the Iranian regime needs to look at.
Right.
And without this will, after 6 months, people will come out on the streets again.
Right.
So this whole uprising will continue until something gives. And that is like something that the Iranian regime needs to internally look at.
Right.
And like see how an inclusive economic model can develop. And for that, I personally think, and people will not like this, that they will have to negotiate with the US and regional stakeholders.
Right, right. Sheharyar, let's finally come to the US. Our newfound best friend, President Donald Trump. Firstly, tell me, from a security angle, how sustainable is that friendship? Is it a long-term thing, or is it a convenience-based thing at the moment? And then what does the future of the United States and Pakistan as a bilateral relation look like?
So whether this romance between the Trump administration and Pakistan continues, that is something that I cannot predict. But I can predict one thing, that history basically shows how the future trajectory will be. Historically, Pakistan-US relationship has always been very transactional, and it has always been viewed under the lens of security. Pakistan has basically been a net security provider, and the biggest export of Pakistan has been vis-a-vis the US defense services. So how do we, and obviously Pakistan has gotten a lot of US aid and a lot of like support in terms of the support that Pakistan has given to the US, but that support was more focused towards security rather than economic incentives or like economic connections that were supposed to be built, but they were not. This time around, there's this thought in the Pakistani leadership as well, and from the US side, that I basically feel that this relationship needs to evolve, and we have to move beyond the traditional thinking of Pakistan-US coming together only on security issues, and develop some sort of economic linkages. Pakistan does do a lot of exports to the US, but when it comes to US investments in Pakistan, that has always been lacking. So this is something that is being discussed within the framework of US-Pakistan strategic dialogue as well, security dialogue as well, and economic incentives that Pakistan has offered. And as you know, Pakistan has offered access to the US companies to come and explore the potential of minerals. They have also been asked to explore potential of rare earth minerals. A lot of investments in the area of agricultural development. When it comes to IT, a lot of like discussions are happening. Now, what Pakistan needs to do, that this sweet spot that the US-Pakistan relationship has come to after decades, I would say, Pakistan needs to capitalize on that, and capitalize in a way that the US feels comfortable, or their companies feel comfortable, that if they make an investment in Pakistan, they will get a return. Because at the end of the day, the US economic model is dependent on how their corporations basically make investments, and whether they basically see that Pakistan's economic environment provides the opportunities for those companies to make a profit. So when it comes to our policies, ease of doing business, our bureaucracy, red tape, what incentives Pakistan is giving to attract investment. So that is a very, SIFC is working on it day and night. There is Board of Investment, there is Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives. Pakistan needs to do a lot of structural changes, a lot of like reforms that are needed to make sure that the investment that comes into Pakistan is secure. The security environment in Pakistan is conducive, and the companies don't feel, for example, when companies come in, when they want to operate in a certain area, they also need insurance. And if the insurance cost of operating in Pakistan is so high that it even overtakes the profit that those companies would be making, then those companies will not be investing in Pakistan. When you look at Balochistan, when you look at certain areas of KP that historically have the minerals and the rare earth, can you tomorrow take your car and drive to that area to like see if there are like any opportunities there? If Abdullah sitting in Islamabad cannot travel to Balochistan to talk to the local people there, to like check some opportunities of investing, why do you think a company operating from the US would be flying to Pakistan to make those investments? So that is like something that Pakistan needs to work on. And my fear is that we will miss this window of opportunity, this limited window of opportunity. We don't know how things will be after like 4 years. But right now, this is the time to get the US investors to basically invest their capital. And when economic investments by the US are done, I think that it will also have a lot of positive impact on the security situation in Pakistan as well.
Right.
So I think economic incentives should be given, and Pakistan should make sure that they offer a deal to the US investors. I see a lot of positive things happening in the crypto realm. I see a lot of like US investors coming for meetings. I see a lot of American Pakistanis also coming to explore opportunities in Pakistan.
Right.
Let's see if Pakistan can capitalize on that.
Let's hope, inshallah.
Yeah.
Sheharyar, so many questions. I mean, I'm thinking I will need your inputs in a separate episode on the internal workings of the country and then the global, because this has been very Pakistan-centric. But before we do wrap up, I want to understand, because the United States has now become a very volatile state when it comes to the global state, global world order. There are economic action on countries that are not complying with what the president wants. There's also security measures of breaching international law and literally going and picking up people and presidents of countries. What do you think is 2026? Again, it's a full circle. We're coming back to what I started with. But what role do you think the United States is going to be playing in the world in 2026? And if you'd really like to conclude it, are we heading to World War III?
Well, the US is, at this point in time, as we are making this podcast, I think the US is playing a very disruptive role right now. So this like whole of disruption, we'll have to like see what impact it would have on how the international rules-based order either complies or how it reorganizes itself.
If that's a thing anymore. And the whole idea behind the whole spheres of influence, even that is a bit murky right now, on whether the whole Western hemisphere that the US is concentrating on right now, does that apply to other powers that are operating in the globe? For example, if the US is basically concentrating its efforts on the Western hemisphere, will the US be okay with China doing the same in the Eastern hemisphere? Right.
Will the US accept an assertive Russia? Will the US allow Russia to basically change the geography of Ukraine? Because this like goes both ways, If the US wants to disrupt the international rules-based order, is the US, and the US needs to think about it, will the US be okay with how the new world order will emerge? So what will be the role of China? That is how the US will basically be realigning its priorities. And when it comes to China, it is very different in the sense that it's not Russia, When it comes to spheres of influence argument, and when we talk about the Donroe doctrine, China's sphere of influence is not just geographical. We have to see that China is also a major producer. China is a major innovator. China, in a lot of ways, is at par and in a lot of ways exceeds the US in terms of production, economy, capital, the way it's trying to change the global economic architecture. So this whole debate of spheres of influence, what spheres are we talking about? So if the US is comfortable in disrupting the international rules-based order, so the new rules-based order, will it be led by the US or will it be led by China? So that is like something that the US needs to look at. Right now, if we basically compare the two, China is okay with the current, international order. International organizations, UN agencies, the way the international global political economy or economic architecture is there, financial architecture, economic architecture. That was developed by the US after the Second World War. China is okay with it. China is not trying to disrupt it. China is trying to hold it together. The US wants something new. So whenever we are thinking of evolving the current system, that might not go into the favor of the US. That might, obviously, even right now, I basically see that there is multipolarity. US is not the sole superpower. The way the US has, in the recent past, treated its allies, especially in the European Union, they're also hedging their bets. Even Canada a few days ago gave this statement that we will basically reevaluate our relationship with China, and maybe have a better relationship with China. So yes, the